Imagine placing your trust in someone so completely, so unreservedly, that you allow yourself to picture an entire lifetime by their side, seeing every stage of life framed in moments shared with them, from the nervous excitement of young love to the peaceful contentment of old age. You imagine holding their hand through years of joys and sorrows, weathering fierce storms that test your resolve and celebrating victories that feel sweeter because they're shared. You see yourself sitting side by side on a creaking wooden porch as the sun dips below the horizon in brilliant shades of orange and pink, sharing quiet evenings filled with knowing glances and unspoken comfort that comes only from years of understanding each other's hearts. You imagine holidays where laughter fills every corner of the house, where inside jokes and tender gestures become woven into the fabric of your family traditions, where even heartbreak and loss feel bearable because they are there to face it with you, their presence a steady anchor in life's unpredictable waters. You dream of growing old together, of watching each other's hair turn silver, of sharing stories with grandchildren who will roll their eyes at your old-fashioned romance but secretly hope to find something just like it. Then, with no warning, no gradual decline, no gentle breaking point to soften the blow, that vision, one you had built with patience, hope, and boundless love, splinters into jagged, painful fragments that cut deep every time you try to piece them back together. The future you had cherished, planned for, and built your entire sense of self around vanishes in an instant, replaced by shock so profound it leaves you breathless, confusion that makes you question everything you thought you knew, and the crushing weight of betrayal from the very person you had once believed would protect your heart for life, who had promised to be your safe harbor in any storm. But now, picture a twist so unexpected, so strangely beautiful and perfectly timed in its execution, that it seems as though the universe itself has stepped in to right a terrible wrong, that the scales of justice seem to balance all on their own without any intervention from you. The sweetest, most poetic act of revenge arrives, not planned by you, not born from your own scheming or calculated plotting, not emerging from sleepless nights spent fantasizing about payback, but carried out with deliberate brilliance and surgical precision by someone you never could have imagined would become your champion, your ex's very own grandmother. A woman who sees through facades and values integrity above family politics. This is far more than a simple tale about unfaithfulness or romantic disappointment. This is about loyalty that does not waver even when tested by family pressure and social expectations. It's about love that stands guard over the wounded like a fierce sentinel, refusing to let cruelty go unchallenged. It's about pettiness elevated into an art form so flawlessly delivered, so perfectly executed in its timing and impact, that it leaves not only the betrayer stunned and scrambling but an entire family reeling from its seismic impact, questioning everything they thought they knew about loyalty and justice. And when you reach the end of this remarkable tale, you may find yourself applauding with genuine admiration, maybe even rising to your feet to honor this extraordinary woman, in awe of her well-earned title as the unchallenged, undisputed queen of revenge. If you've ever borne the deep, persistent ache of betrayal that settles in your chest like a heavy stone, lying awake at night with thoughts replaying in an endless, torturous loop, dissecting every word and action, analyzing every moment for clues you missed, wondering how someone you trusted could be so deliberately cruel, you will feel this story settle deep in your bones and resonate with your very soul. If you've ever found yourself staring at the ceiling in the dark hours before dawn, longing for a moment when justice would stop dragging its feet through bureaucracy and social niceties and arrive swiftly and decisively like a lightning bolt, you will recognize the deep satisfaction that pulses through every word of this account. If you've ever felt that familiar burn of righteous anger when you witness someone getting away with hurting others, when you see manipulators and cheaters walking through life without consequences while their victims struggle to rebuild, then this story will speak to that part of you that still believes in cosmic justice. This is not just a story told for entertainment. It's a small, perfect reassurance that sometimes, when the stars align just right, people really do get exactly what they deserve, served up on a silver platter by the most unexpected source. So, if you've ever dreamed of wrongdoers finally facing the consequences of their own selfish actions, if you've ever wished you could witness karma in action rather than just hoping it exists, take a moment, settle in comfortably, lean in close, and brace yourself for an emotional journey. This tale will take you through the depths of pain and betrayal, up through the mountains of resilience and healing, across valleys of unexpected loyalty, and finally to the peak of one of the sharpest, most satisfying acts of retaliation you might ever have the pleasure of hearing. When this particular chapter of her life began, our protagonist was at her absolute lowest point, emotionally shattered and spiritually depleted. Her engagement, what she had believed was the beginning of her happily ever after, had ended in a way so harsh, so brutal and unexpected, that it left her feeling raw and completely untethered from everything she had once believed about love and trust, her heart scattered like autumn leaves in a violent windstorm. The betrayal had been so complete, so devastating in its scope, that she found herself questioning not just her relationship, but her entire understanding of human nature and her own worth as a person deserving of love and respect. With nowhere else to turn, no family nearby to offer comfort, and friends who seemed uncomfortable with the messiness of her pain, she found herself in the most unlikely of situations, moving into the warm, welcoming home of her ex-fiancé's grandparents, people who, rather than closing their door to her out of family loyalty or awkward obligation, opened it wide and welcomed her in with genuine warmth and unconditional acceptance. These remarkable individuals, who had every reason to choose sides and support their own blood, instead chose to see her pain and respond with kindness that defied conventional expectations. The moment she stepped through their front door, carrying her few belongings and her loyal dog, the atmosphere seemed to wrap around her like a hand-stitched quilt made with love and patience. There was the gentle, golden glow of lamplight falling across the living room in pools of warmth, the steady, soothing click of GMA's knitting needles punctuating the comfortable quiet like a meditation bell, creating a rhythm that somehow made breathing easier. There were warm dinners that filled the house with aromas that smelled like childhood memories and simpler times. Roast chicken with herbs, fresh bread that steamed when broken open, vegetables from their own garden prepared with care and attention. The conversations around their modest dining table were filled with soft laughter and gentle stories, but never invasive interrogation about what had happened or pushy advice about what she should do next. Every smile from her new housemates felt like a healing balm applied to wounds that had been left raw and exposed, each one a gentle reminder that not all bonds are automatically broken when romance ends, that some connections transcend the failures of others. Her dog, a faithful companion who had been her constant source of unconditional love throughout the ordeal, became her shadow in this new environment, padding after her from room to room with protective devotion, curling at her feet while she sat in the evening light, his steady breathing serving as an anchor in the chaos of her emotions. The dog seemed to understand, in that intuitive way animals possess, that his human needed extra comfort and attention, and he rarely left her side except when absolutely necessary. Yet despite all this comfort and care surrounding her, the sharp sting of betrayal still clung to her consciousness like acrid smoke, an invisible but persistent reminder she could not shake no matter how much genuine warmth and acceptance surrounded her daily life. The pain had a way of creeping in during quiet moments, catching her off guard when she least expected it, a constant companion that refused to be dismissed by kindness alone. Some nights were the absolute hardest to endure, when the walls she had built during the day came crashing down in the darkness. Without warning or preparation, a vivid memory of the moment she learned the devastating truth would slam into her consciousness like a physical blow, knocking the wind from her lungs and leaving her gasping for air. Her heart would race uncontrollably, pounding against her ribs as if trying to escape. Her breath would catch in her throat, and she would lie there in the darkness of her borrowed bedroom as the tears came in waves she couldn't control or predict. She would think about the way the realization had unfolded in excruciating slow motion, each second heavier than the last, each new piece of evidence adding weight to the crushing truth until the full magnitude of his betrayal settled on her chest like a boulder she couldn't move. Those nights stretched endlessly, time moving like thick syrup, and in each sleepless hour, she tortured herself with the same devastating questions that had no satisfying answers. Was she not enough for him? What had she missed in all their time together? Had she done something, said something, failed to be something that made betrayal seem justified in his eyes? Had she been blind to obvious signs that everyone else could see? She would comb through every moment they had shared together like a detective searching for clues, examining their conversations, their intimate moments, their fights and reconciliations, looking for warnings she should have noticed, red flags she should have recognized. This constant, obsessive questioning left her emotionally exhausted and physically drained, her sense of self shaken in ways she had never imagined possible, as if the very foundation of her identity had been built on lies and was now crumbling beneath her feet. The self-doubt was perhaps the cruelest part of the betrayal, not just the loss of the relationship, but the loss of trust in her own judgment, her own perceptions, her own worth as a human being deserving of honest love. In stark, almost insulting contrast to her nightly struggles, Her ex seemed to walk through life without carrying even an ounce of remorse or regret, as if the years they had spent together meant nothing more to him than a casual acquaintance he had discarded without a second thought. There was a smugness about him that was impossible to overlook, a self-satisfied arrogance that radiated from every carefully curated photo he posted on social media and every calculated word he spoke to mutual acquaintances. His behavior suggested not just a lack of guilt, but an almost sociopathic inability to comprehend the pain he had caused, as if other people's emotions were simply inconveniences that didn't factor into his decision-making process. His next move was nothing short of a calculated, deliberate blow designed to inflict maximum emotional damage. He proposed to her former friend, someone who had sat at their dinner table, who had been invited to intimate gatherings, who had pretended to care about their relationship while apparently plotting its destruction from within. It was an act so obviously motivated by spite rather than genuine affection that even casual observers could see it had less to do with love and more to do with ego, power, and a twisted desire to prove that he could replace her instantly and completely. He made the engagement into a carefully orchestrated performance, posting curated pictures of manufactured happiness, perfectly staged embraces and practiced smiles that looked hollow to anyone paying attention, spinning elaborate tales of their perfect, new relationship to anyone who would listen. He would casually drop mentions of his exciting new future into conversations with mutual friends at coffee shops and social gatherings, each comment carefully crafted to reach her ears through the inevitable gossip chain and trigger the emotional reaction he was hoping for. His behavior was textbook manipulation, designed to make her feel worthless and easily replaceable while painting himself as the victim who had simply found true love with someone who understood him better. But she refused to take the bait, displaying a strength and wisdom that impressed everyone who witnessed her restraint. She made the difficult but necessary decision to cut him out of her life entirely, blocking him on every social media platform, removing the possibility of his carefully staged photos slipping into her view and reopening wounds that were trying to heal. She asked mutual friends not to share updates about his life, explaining that she needed space to recover without constant reminders of his attempts to hurt her. The silence was not a weakness or an inability to confront the situation, but rather a deliberate, strategic choice and an act of self-preservation that required more strength than most people possess. She understood intuitively that engaging with his provocations would only feed his ego and delay her own healing process, that the best revenge against someone seeking attention is to deny them the satisfaction of a reaction. Instead of wasting her energy on responding to his childish games, she made the conscious decision that every ounce of her emotional and mental energy would go into healing and rebuilding rather than responding to his attempts at manipulation. She began chasing hobbies that had once brought her genuine joy but had been neglected during her relationship. Painting watercolor landscapes, reading novels that transported her to other worlds, taking long walks in nature that cleared her mind and strengthened her body. She reignited passions she had set aside, rediscovering parts of herself that had gotten lost in the process of trying to be the perfect partner to someone who didn't deserve her efforts. She committed every single day to caring for both her body and mind with the same dedication she had once poured into her relationship, establishing routines that nurtured her physical health and emotional well-being. Slowly, steadily, with patience and determination, she rebuilt herself from the inside out, creating a stronger, more resilient version of the person she had been before the betrayal. The transformation was quiet and gradual, not dramatic or showy, but profound in its depth and authenticity. In that patient process of reconstruction, others began to notice her inner strength, her grace under pressure, her refusal to become bitter or vindictive despite having every right to both emotions. Chief among those who admired her remarkable resilience was GMA, who had evolved from being merely a generous host providing temporary shelter into something far more precious, a true confidant, a chosen family member, a source of wisdom and unconditional support. Their private conversations became the protagonist's safe harbor in the storm of her recovery, a sacred space where she could be completely honest about her pain without fear of judgment or unwanted advice. Sometimes they would talk until long after the clock crept past midnight, the house settling into peaceful quiet around them, the room dim except for a single lamp casting warm circles of light, the silence broken only by the sound of her voice sharing her deepest fears or GMA's gentle reassurances that healing takes time and courage. Sometimes their talks were dotted with unexpected laughter, small moments of joy that reminded her that happiness was still possible even in the midst of grief, that humor could coexist with heartbreak and actually help in the healing process. Other times, they would simply sit together in comfortable silence, and that wordless companionship was healing in its own way, a reminder that she didn't always have to be strong or articulate her feelings to be valued and understood. GMA never offered harsh judgment about the ex-fiancé or tried to rush her past her pain with platitudes about getting over it or moving on, understanding instinctively that healing cannot be forced or hurried. She simply listened with the patience of someone who had lived long enough to understand that emotional wounds require time and gentle care to mend properly. When she did offer words of wisdom, they were always softened with love and delivered with the kind of genuine care that comes only from someone who truly sees and values another person's heart. Then came the evening that altered the entire trajectory of the situation, a moment that would be remembered as the turning point in this story of betrayal and justice. GMA, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable note of steel-backed determination, revealed that she would not be attending her grandson's wedding, not out of petty anger toward him alone, but out of unwavering loyalty to the protagonist who had been wronged so deeply and publicly. The impact of those words was immediate and profound, settling heavily in the space between them like a stone dropped into still water, creating ripples that would eventually reach every corner of the family. At first, she felt gratitude so overwhelming it brought tears to her eyes, a rush of emotion at being chosen and defended by someone who had no obligation to take her side in what could have been viewed as a family matter that didn't concern outsiders. But almost immediately, that gratitude was joined by genuine worry and concern for the consequences of such a bold stand. She urged GMA to reconsider her decision, pointing out with sincere anxiety how her absence might fracture the family further, how it could create lasting divisions and hurt relationships that had taken decades to build. She worried about GMA being ostracized or punished for choosing loyalty to an outsider over blood family, about the potential for lasting damage to important relationships. But when she looked into GMA's eyes, she saw something unshakable there, a resolve that had been tested by years of life experience and found to be absolutely solid. GMA's gaze was unflinching, her voice steady and certain when she spoke words that would echo through the coming weeks. "He cheated on you," she said, each word sharp and deliberate, cutting through any possible justification or excuse. "Plain and simple. I will not bless that marriage with my presence, and I will not pretend that what he did was acceptable just because he shares my blood." As the wedding date approached with ominous inevitability, fate decided to add one more cruel twist to an already painful situation. The date the ex had chosen for his new wedding was the exact same one she had once circled on her calendar with excitement and anticipation. The date she had envisioned for her own ceremony, when she had still believed in their love and their future together. The symbolism was either deliberately cruel or coincidentally brutal, but either way, it felt like a final insult designed to maximize her pain and remind her of everything she had lost. When that fateful day finally arrived, the skies seemed to reflect the emotional weight of the situation, muted and gray, with heavy clouds hanging low like a blanket of sorrow, creating an atmosphere that felt both ominous and oddly appropriate for what was about to unfold. But inside the grandparents' cozy home, the scene was unexpectedly and delightfully bright, a stark contrast to the gloom outside and the supposed solemnity of the occasion they were deliberately avoiding. The air was scented not with the expensive perfumes and formal cologne that would be present at the wedding, but with the homey sweetness of melted chocolate and sugar, the comforting aroma of Easter candy and simple pleasures that spoke of joy found in small, genuine moments rather than grand, hollow gestures. GMA had chosen to wear a delightfully loud pastel blouse covered in flowers so large and vibrant they seemed to practically hum with defiance, a fashion choice that announced her complete lack of concern for conventional propriety or family expectations. Meanwhile, GPA sported mismatched suspenders with a mischievous grin that suggested he was thoroughly enjoying the subtle rebellion they had embarked upon together. The protagonist's dog seemed to sense the unusual energy in the house, dancing around their legs with excitement, his tail wagging furiously as though he understood instinctively that they were on the edge of an adventure, that something significant and satisfying was about to unfold. The atmosphere in the house was festive rather than somber, celebratory rather than regretful, as if they were hosting their own private party in honor of integrity and loyalty rather than mourning a missed social obligation. Throughout the morning, calls and messages poured in from relatives and family friends, each one offering transportation to the ceremony, urging them to reconsider their decision, even dangling first-class tickets and luxury accommodations as incentives to attend. Some callers were genuinely confused by their absence, unable to understand how grandparents could miss their grandson's wedding. Others were more calculating, suggesting that their absence would be noticed and commented upon, that it would create family drama and hurt feelings that could last for years. Each offer and plea was met with the same polite but unwavering decline, delivered with a courtesy that made it impossible to argue with but left no room for negotiation. No long explanations were offered, no guilt-ridden apologies were extended, no justifications were provided. Just a calm, resolute "no, thank you" that brooked no further discussion. And quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, their principled refusal began to stir something profound in other family members who had been watching the situation unfold with growing discomfort. One by one, like dominoes falling in a carefully orchestrated sequence, relatives began to make their own decisions about attendance, inspired by the grandparents' courage to take a moral stand regardless of social expectations or family pressure. Aunts who had been uncomfortable with the circumstances surrounding the engagement began to question whether they really wanted to celebrate a union built on betrayal. Cousins who had always respected the grandparents' judgment started to wonder if attending would be seen as condoning behavior they actually found reprehensible. Family friends who had known and loved the protagonist during her relationship began to feel that attending the wedding would be a betrayal of their own values and relationships. By the time the ceremony was scheduled to begin, its fate had already been sealed by a series of principled decisions that created a cascade effect throughout the extended family network. The wedding that had been planned as a grand celebration, a public vindication of the ex's choices and a demonstration of his ability to move on successfully, was about to become something entirely different, a sparsely attended affair that would serve as a public referendum on his character and choices. Back at the house, the clock's hands moved with deliberate slowness past the hours when the ceremony would be taking place, then continued their steady march toward the time when the reception should have been in full swing. She found herself watching those hands with fascination, feeling a strange and complex mix of emotions swirling through her consciousness: pride at the unwavering loyalty being displayed on her behalf, anxiety about the potential fallout and family consequences that might result from this bold stand, and a deep, awed respect for the sheer moral resolve being demonstrated by people who had no obligation to defend her but chose to do so anyway. GMA sipped her afternoon tea with the serene composure of someone whose conscience was completely clear, as if nothing in the world could.